Hello, guys. Welcome back to Tweedle Time. It's your host, Andrew.
And I'm co-host James.
Yep. Sorry about last week. There was this big project, and we need to get done, and I thought we'd have time for recording a podcast. And then guess what? We didn't.
Whoa, big surprise there. Yeah, we're still in school. It's unfortunate to say the least, but yeah, we couldn't get around to recording the podcast. We were just too busy with other stuff. So we're planning on doing a double upload this week.
Yep. And to take a break from history, because we do a lot of history just in general. And don't worry, that's nowhere near going to stop. That's going to be on
Yeah,
forever.
no, we're still going to have a lot of history. But today, we have some sci-fi stuff. Something I'm very passionate about. Star Wars, specifically the ships of Star Wars.
I don't know if you guys heard of this franchise. It's called Star Wars.
Oh, yes. It's a little
Just kidding.
obscure.
It's not a franchise anymore. It belongs to Disney. Anyway.
That's a tear shed by me, man. I can't deal with that one. That's awful.
Yeah, okay. So,
Stupid Disney buys out everything.
now Disney owns it. Nothing can go wrong.
Oh, yes, and then we got movies, and they were not good. They were not as good.
Some of them weren't that bad.
Yes, I'll say one. Like, Rogue One I thought was pretty good. But
Yeah.
then there was The Last Jedi, and that
be
was
better.
not
And I
fantastic.
haven't seen after since The Just Jedi because I have lost a little bit of interest, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So, but besides that,
I think we're getting off topic.
yes, we are. So, ships.
Yes. I'll start out with some basic information so
Like
that you can
aircraft
understand
carriers.
stuff. No aircraft carriers. This is space.
Yeah, unfortunately, not them ships.
It's spaceship carriers. Clearly.
Unfortunately, we can't talk about the British wanting to make an aircraft carrier out of a mix of wood and ice.
Oh, yes.
Because they
Unfortunately.
ran out of steel.
It's not in this. I'll start with the fun stuff, the weapons on the ships themselves. There were a couple of different kinds. There were
got
two
the-
kinds of... What?
We got the pew-pew guns and
Oh.
the blast guns.
Incredible. Yes. The
But
variety.
fine, since we apparently are supposed to give proper names, James, would you like to explain the proper terms?
Yes. One of these is laser cannons, and those are slightly less powerful than their... the alternative turbo lasers. I mean, it sounds like the turbo lasers are a bit stronger.
Are you sure?
No, not really. Maybe they are weaker, and I'm just a fool. But the laser cannons are anti-fighter things because they shoot a lot faster and they're a lot more accurate. So you use them to shoot at starfighters. Unfortunately, they are garbage against anything that's not a starfighter because they do no damage to anything else.
But yeah, good luck outrunning it, because surprisingly, light is fast.
Wow, light is pretty fast, yeah. And because if you have like a really accurate system for shooting on your ship, then you could theoretically shoot missiles, torpedoes out of space. I was gonna say out of the sky, but it's not really a sky; it's space. You can shoot other missiles and stuff coming at your ship.
Technically, you could be fighting like the very, very limits of the atmosphere in space of a planet.
That's true.
It happens once in a while.
Yeah, that's true. It does happen. And then the other one is turbo lasers. These are not on starfighters. Starfighters are all armed with laser cannons, and then maybe bombs, torpedoes, missiles, stuff like that. Insanely rarely would you find a turbo laser on a starfighter.
Stuff except for obviously lasers, they'd probably find them almost realistic on an actual ship.
Yeah, you still find laser cannons on most capital ships. Some of them are entirely dedicated to turbo lasers, but those are not terribly common. And some are dedicated entirely to laser cannons, and those aren't terribly common either, because you want a bit of versatility. But turbo lasers are supposed to be for anti-capital ships. Unfortunately, because the Empire is stupid and they just put a bunch of those on their Star Destroyers, that's all they had to shoot at fighters with. So I guess that's what they're being used for
Tactics
then.
101.
Oh, I know, brilliant design
I
plan
bet you
there.
I bet you got their Empire plans from Mussolini.
Oh yes, totally. The amount of competence with the whole thing must have been Mussolini in the background.
And if only they were the Byzantines. But for once, I'm actually plugging an episode that's going to happen soon.
Yes, actually.
Stay tuned for next week.
Yeah. Oh, the reason that you didn't have turbo lasers on fighters is because they used a lot of power, and they had a really slow rate of fire, so you wouldn't want to put them on fighters anyway.
Hence the name Turbo.
Yeah, man, turbo lasers, a lot of power in those. And then there were two kinds of they're both missiles. One is called a missile, one's called a torpedo. I don't really get what the difference is.
I mean, normally if you're talking like actual reality, normally you'd talk about like missiles would be something you're shooting in the air, where torpedoes are normally in like the sea.
Well,
Issue is outer space. Yes.
Yeah. Well, I think that why they're calling one torpedo and one a missile is because they're concussion missiles and proton torpedoes. The proton torpedoes are fired out of tubes,
Yeah.
like an actual torpedo in real life is. So I guess that's why they're calling those torpedoes. But
They both serve the same purpose. They blow stuff up.
yeah, that's basically the entire purpose. Is you shoot them at something to blow it up.
Except it wouldn't make noise because it's how space works.
Yeah, that's true. How unfortunate. It'd be cool to listen to the explosions.
I know. I mean, probably my thing on full blast, and then listen for it, and then like, what the heck is the noise? And now I hear someone saying testing, and my ears, man.
Yeah, it'd be terrible. The concussion missiles you'd find on some starfighters, a couple of gunships, and a couple of capital ships, like a Victory 1 Star Destroyer has a ton of concussion missile launchers on it. It's really cool to see. In video games when those things just unleash a hail of missiles. They're pretty good against fighters and ships, mostly ships, because they do a lot of damage, but they can hit fighters, and that's pretty good.
Now that's a lot of damage. Plug in the meme episode, which is going to be, technically history of memes, coming later today.
We need some flex tape to fix these problems.
Yeah, I know. If only a very long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away, they actually had access to some nice flex tape and flex seal.
Yeah, it would have saved everything. The proton torpedoes, those are really nice because they can pass through some... There are two kinds of shields, a ray shield and a particle shield. One is meant for protecting against energy. The other is meant to protect against actual mass, stuff with mass. And the proton torpedoes can pass through, I think it's the ray shields.
Yeah, I think you are correct.
Because they're not energy, they're particles. Yeah, I think they pass through ray shields, which is pretty cool.
And then we get into this whole conversation about photons being a particle or
No,
being...
proton. It's with an R.
No, photons.
No.
Which are light particles.
Yeah, no, there are light particles, yes.
Which, is that energy, or is it a particle?
Both.
So that's when you get the issue. That's when you get the issue, and you start getting that far into subatomic levels.
Yeah, we're not going into that. We're not smart enough, unfortunately.
Maybe eventually.
Maybe we'll be smart enough. Sometime.
If this video gets like 1,000 likes, next episode will be quantum physics.
Oh yes,
a
totally.
full in-depth analysis.
There are two more weapons. One is an ion cannon. You remember in the scene from Empire Strikes Back when they have a giant cannon on the ice planet and they shoot at a Star Destroyer and it kind of like starts listing and everything? That's an ion cannon. What it does is it's very good for damaging shields and electric systems in ships. So you shoot at a ship and you could disable a ship and its systems by shooting at it. It really doesn't do damage per se.
Yeah.
You mostly find them on capital ships or planets use them to defend themselves, and some fighters will have them, especially gunships, because gunships have a lot of guns on them. So yeah, they have those.
After all, an ion, it's just what, a particle with a charge? Sorry, atom with a charge.
Yeah, so they're just firing a bunch of atoms with charges,
Which they tend to react to things. That's why they're really good at breaking into things. They don't tend to do like full-on burst damage everywhere.
Yeah. The last one is a mass driver cannon, and you really don't find these on ships used by the Rebellion, the Empire, or anyone else. These things are used on pirate ships because they're kind of crappy, but then not. They fire huge slugs of stuff. I'm pretty sure it's metal. They just fire huge slugs at stuff. It's really cool, and it does a lot of damage.
Is it like condensed metal?
Yeah, it's like they shoot balls of condensed metal.
I mean, it's no black hole dense.
Yeah, it's not that, but it's pretty decent, and it can be quite effective against stuff.
Would that be considered some kind of form of almost like rude warfare?
Yeah, I guess. The other stuff is most ships. Basically, all ships and most fighters have a deflector shield, which is basically just a ray shield and a particle shield put together, and you have a deflector shield.
Bam.
Yeah, I know, it's crazy.
Try getting through that.
Yeah, exactly. They keep the particle shield active at all times in case they like hit an asteroid or something. Then they want to have the shield that blocks mass.
Yeah.
Ray shields are turned on during battle because you're getting light shot at you now. The last thing that has to do with like actual combat and stuff is a tractor beam. Those are found on really large capital ships. They just grab ships and draw them in.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure everyone's heard of tractor beams if they've seen at least one type of alien invasion movie or something equivalent.
Yeah, it's basically that stuff.
Yeah.
And that's everything for basic technology. I'll talk about the classes of stuff, and then I'll go into like specific fighters in each. Well, actually, I think I'll just combine. I'll talk about the classes and specific stuff in each class, and I have some books
First
here.
class, we got history, then we got Spanish. Just kidding.
Science.
I don't want to actually do classes right now. I've done enough of that already.
Yeah, we're almost out of school. It's so nice. The first one is Starfighter. I'm gonna go from smallest to largest. The first one is Starfighters. I'm pretty sure you know what those look like. They're just a little 2 to 3 person crew. They can be very fast. There are a couple of different variants like bombers, gunships, transports, shuttles, and then there's a thing called space superiority fighters, which are just fighters that are designed to be really good at fighting.
My favorite form of supremacy.
Space supremacy.
Mm.
Are you gonna come after us about that? I don't think you can. A little bigger. Actually, it's weird. These things are a little big. These things are only a little bigger, and then they're a lot bigger. It's kind of a weird class for defining ships. They're called freighters. Basically, they're just stuff that carries. They're ships that carry stuff, and they can be small, like the Millennium Falcon is a freighter.
Yeah.
Or they could be huge, like just Star Destroyer size, huge.
That's good stuff right there.
Yeah, they're just civilian use stuff. Although for some reason the Rebellion decided to use the GR-75. You know the transport that kind of looks like a torpedo.
Yeah.
The Rebellion uses it. It's garbage. I don't know why they use it because it has no weapons.
Probably because of the fact that it tends to look like insuspicious. It could be just civilians.
But they send it into battle.
Well, do you forget the rebels don't actually have all the supplies in the world, right? That's the issue they have.
I guess they could send it in as like a ship for just saturation, like you just see more ships, but
Yeah, like there's not. They don't. You gotta remember they don't have a lot of everything. If you actually consider the fact that you're talking about an empire controlling a vast amount of territory, can draw upon a lot of resources.
yeah,
Rebellion can't really draw upon all that much.
That's right. Yeah, I don't know why they send it, but yeah, it's a freighter. You see them in basically all the movies.
The only time a rebellion ever has like an absurd amount of power is if the military is rebelling.
Yeah.
Which unfortunately, it appears the empire is not happily having that of an issue of that.
The Empire was basically the military.
Yeah, that's the issue. When you have a military dictatorship, it's kind of hard to get a military to rebel against you without actually just being a coup.
Yeah, that's true. Moving up from freighters, sort of, we have gunships. They're a bit bigger than starfighters, but not that much. And they have just guns. That's basically the whole point of them. They are ships with they're smaller ships that are just have as many guns as people could put on them.
That's fair enough. I mean, if you don't have enough ships, we have a lot of guns.
Yeah, exactly.
What are you going to do with them?
Yeah, you got a bunch of guns and a couple of those ships that are a bit bigger than starfighters. You just put them there. It's insane.
Genius.
There are some, like the Skip Ray blast boat, that just have stupid amounts of weapons on them. They have proton torpedoes, concussion missiles, and like 8 laser cannons all over it.
Weapons for days.
Oh, I know. These things fly out and just start shooting everywhere. They're primarily for anti-starfighter stuff. Yeah. You send them out to fight other starfighters. Most of the time, they're pretty fast, but not as fast as like a good starfighter.
I mean, yeah, you're just slapping a bunch of guns on, hope it works. I mean, you don't have to be. At least you don't have to be accurate. If you have you're shooting a million things at a time.
Yeah, if you're just blasting everywhere, you don't really have to be terribly accurate. And because you're using these against starfighters, it'd be really effective because more guns, more chance of hitting stuff.
Yeah.
And they could be effective against capital ships because they have the missiles and torpedoes.
Yeah.
Because I was thinking about, there's actually an Empire. The Empire has a ship called the Missile Gunship.
I wonder what it does.
It's like the missile boat ship. It is literally, like if you took, you know what the transports look like, how they have the 2 wings in the cockpit?
Yeah.
They have just 2 huge squares that are just filled with missile pods. And they fly out and just start shooting missiles everywhere.
Fair enough. Sounds like fun to me.
Oh, I know. It was stupidly effective because it was just explosions everywhere.
You try dodging all those explosives.
Yeah.
You won't.
You bet you won't. Moving up, we have corvettes. These are like the smallest capital ships that aren't fighters.
Yeah. See, the fun fact is, if you know anything about ships, just normal ships, you can actually fly that pretty decently to Star Wars.
Yeah, a lot of stuff that applies to our regular navies could apply to Star Wars, just like size and guns and everything, what the concentration is. But there are a couple of things that are different. Like there's a Star Destroyer class of ships.
Which I know, surprisingly, we don't have that ourselves.
Yeah,
we have
crazy.
Destroyers.
Yeah,
But those aren't destroying stars, now are they?
No, I guess not. Weak. We need to expect more out of our military. We need them to be able to destroy stars at will.
Man. I remember hilariously enough about this. There was a petition with enough signatures signed. The government had to acknowledge it, asking for to build a Star Destroyer. And unfortunately, Obama turned it down, saying it didn't seem like a good use of resources.
Obama, how could you?
To build a giant thing to destroy stars that could be destroyed with one singular shot if strategically done well.
Are we thinking of the same thing?
Like an actual Star Destroyer. The one.
Star Destroyer is the flying triangle.
Oh no, I'm talking about the actual Death Star. That's what
You were thinking of the Death Star.
Sorry, I misspoke. Sorry about that.
Death Star is for destroying planets, by
Sorry,
the way.
I misspoke there. But yeah, basically that was the whole issue there. They wanted they wanted a Death Star. Unfortunately, Obama turned it down.
Wow, that's disappointing. I mean, if we really wanted something that could destroy stars, in Star Wars Legends there was a ship called Sun Crusher, which shot like a special missile at a star, which made it supernova.
Better question: if it's in a galaxy far, far away, why is it named something named after a star in our galaxy?
I don't know.
I'm
It's
just pretty
crazy
kidding.
stuff.
Mostly.
Where were we? Corvettes.
Yeah.
Corvettes is where we were. Corvettes were just very fast, small ships. They were anti-starfighter for the most part, though sometimes they had one or two turbo lasers on them, but they were kind of weak, so you wouldn't really send them against bigger capital ships anyway. They were
If
mostly...
you get enough of them, you can win, James.
Yeah, you could win. You'd probably take a stupid number of casualties, but you could win. Yeah, but you just send them to fight starfighters.
History has taught me anything. If you have enough men to send at them, you can still win.
That's true. That's true. I actually had that happen. I was playing a Star Wars game. I had huge ships over this planet and its defense force, and my enemy sent like 50 smaller ships, and I almost lost. I took huge casualties. It was terrible. I had like one or two ships left by the end of it. I started with like 20. It was awful. I hate those ships now.
Yep. There's one thing you gotta remember is technology can only go far if someone's willing to actually utilize the manpower.
Yeah, that's true. The Corvettes were used a lot by the Rebellion, also, like CR-90s and stuff. Like at the very start of A New Hope, the ship that was flying that the Star Destroyer was coming after.
Yeah.
That was a CR-90, mostly used for anti-starfighter. It's funny, the Empire never really spec'd into Corvettes. It was just all Star Destroyers with them.
Guess they're thinking, hey, we have enough industry to build massive things. Why don't we just build massive things? Who cares about these small ships?
Yeah, they had a thing called the Tarkin Doctrine, which is basically just scare the people in the planets. So putting giant ships above the planet would scare them pretty good.
I mean, if you get a reputation for being really powerful or brutal,
Yeah.
then you can easily get people just to surrender based on the name recognition.
Yeah, so...
Similar, you can get someone to buy your product, even if your product is garbage, but a lot of people have heard of it. It's likely that someone's going to buy it regardless because they heard of it.
Yeah, that's true. But that's why they never really spec'd into any good corvettes or frigates. Speaking of frigates, that's what we're moving on to. Frigates are weird. There aren't really destroyers in Star Wars. Not really. There's a couple that are named destroyers, like the in the Clone Wars, the droid dudes, the CIS.
Yeah.
They had something called the Recusant Destroyer, which is basically just a frigate. But they're used for dealing damage because they had more turbo lasers on them than a Corvette.
Fair enough.
Or you would use them for fighter screening, which is just you put them in front of your bigger ships so that they shoot the fighters down before they can get to your big ones.
Yeah, that makes sense. Those are expensive to make.
Yeah, so you don't want some stupid squadron of B-Wings destroying your Star Destroyers. So, in theory, you would put something in front of them to shoot at those B-wings.
Similar how aircraft carriers, they don't just send them out with only aircraft carriers. There's a patrol all around them to make sure they don't get close to aircraft carriers. If the thing gets destroyed, it's expensive.
Yeah, that's basically what you do. You put some ships around it to protect it, and that's how frigates and corvettes work. You'd use them to protect your bigger ships from starfighters.
Yep.
But they were not as fast as corvettes, but they still were decent, and they were kind of garbage when it came to taking on bigger ships because they still weren't very powerful, kind of like corvettes, but a little more powerful. They could take on corvettes.
Yeah.
They couldn't really take on anything bigger. But they were nice if you had a bunch of them and you just had them laying down fire. Moving up, we have cruisers. Now we're getting bigger.
I have one question to ask
We're
you.
getting good. What's up?
Why is none of them and decided to spec in the atomic, biological, or chemical warfare?
They did have biological. Several times they made up different diseases and stuff for killing stuff. Like the CIS made an anti-biological weapon, just anything biological, because they used droids.
Yeah.
And they tried using that, but it was stopped early on.
They must have been sitting in Greenland too long.
Yeah, they must have been sitting in Greenland too long. Also in Legends, which is like outside the movies, there were these really awful biological things from outside of the galaxy that came in and killed trillions. And so the government's trying to stop that. They made up a certain chemicals thing that targets biological stuff. Maybe just to use on Vong, maybe not. I can't really remember perfectly. And then they used that against him, and it killed a lot of stuff, and it was kind of bad because it didn't really work how they wanted it and just killed a bunch of stuff instead of just the bad guys.
We did it, boys. Plague is no more.
We did it. The use on Vong are no more. And then they still were. It was bad.
It doesn't exist.
Of course. Sorry. Cruisers were good. They were powerful. More powerful than frigates and stuff. Now we're getting into like good stuff. They were the most common military ship because they were like medium-sized ships, so you'd have a lot of medium-sized ships.
Makes sense.
They were designed to fight other ships that are medium-sized or a bit bigger than them, or a bit smaller if they really wanted to kill some frigates because they were feeling like being bullies. Bullying the smaller ships.
I don't feel like getting bullied anymore.
That's it. I've had it. There were a couple of different sub-variants of cruisers. Like, they were cruiser size, but they weren't made for shooting at other ships. Like, there were specific carriers. Those would be cruiser size, unless you're talking about something like a Lucre Hulk, which in the... Andrew, have you seen The Phantom Menace?
No, I have not, unfortunately.
All right, that's okay. That's fine. The Lucre Hulk is a gargantuan ship that the droid army sent. It was used as a control ship in the beginning, but then they revamped it by putting a stupid number of guns all over it. So basically became a battleship.
Okay.
But the Lucre Hulk could carry about 400 droid starfighters in it.
Okay.
Plus, like, it could have more than that.
Okay.
So they could just launch swarms and be their own defense against anything coming at them. So it was pretty crazy. Those things were carriers, but most of the time there's something like a Quasar, which is kind of small.
Yeah.
Just carries a couple dozen fighters, not really very well defended itself. But that is what most people used. They were just made for transporting fighters. There were also interdictors, which are really cool. They're about cruiser size. The Empire was the one who really developed these. They had these huge orb things on them called gravity well generators. And the whole point of these gravity well generators was to make it so that ships in this gravity well can't hyperspace jump out. So that's why the Empire spec'd into this, because the Rebels were very, very slippery. So you'd make it so that they can't hyperspace out of there.
That was like their thing.
Yeah, that was their thing. They'd run in, blow up a bunch of stuff, and then leave. Rude.
It's like Italy not being bad at military. What is this?
Unbelievable. But they never really spec'd into these enough, so it was unfortunate.
Yeah.
We only have 3 more classes and almost no time. So, unfortunate. Maybe we'll have to do one with actual starfighter names and descriptions at some other point. But I guess this can just be a general video about these.
I mean, yeah, I don't even... It's not like you only have half an hour and you're covering a lot of material. What do you expect? You can't really get much more than general a lot of these topics unless you're like hyper-focusing on an event.
Yeah, that's true.
So, utilize the time you got.
Yeah, I really need to hurry up. The last few. Star Destroyers is like a class of ships bigger than cruisers, but smaller than battle cruisers. It's weird. Cruisers and battle cruisers are entirely different things, and Star Destroyers are in the middle. They're big. It's about up to the size of an Imperial Star Destroyer 2, because there were two kinds of them.
I would just like to point out you doing your thing with the hands is not helping when you're talking about on a table.
What are you talking about?
Because I don't think
Me
you can.
doing
I don't
this
think,
doesn't help.
I don't think you can stretch your hands far enough to do the real size.
Oh, of course not, because these things are about 1,000. No,
No, actually, we're only this long, James.
Yes. Sorry, they're only about 3 feet long. All of these ships are just really small. The whole galaxy is shrunk to the size of about our planet. That's why all this stuff is small. They're very, very powerful, especially if it's like a dedicated all turbo laser Star Destroyer ship. It's very good. The Rebellion had basically none of these because they were all about the small ships because they couldn't afford big ones.
Yeah.
The Empire was all over Star Destroyer type ships. They had oodles of Star Destroyers.
It's kind of hard to industrialize an area when it's constantly being blown up by the Empire.
No, it was mostly the Rebellion blowing stuff up.
I was talking about just in the sense of you trying to set up like a big home base. It's not that necessarily.
Oh yeah, for the rebels, they couldn't really set up anything.
You set up as soon as you set up a big base, you're doing conventional warfare, and rebels don't tend to be that great in conventional warfare, just in general throughout history.
Yeah, their whole Rebellion in Star Wars was really guerrilla warfare. They couldn't really afford to do anything big. Most of the Mon Calamari cruisers, which are the big kind of torpedo. The Rebellion had a lot of torpedo-looking ships. It's kind of weird, but the Mon Calamari ships.
What is this, Japan?
I guess so. The Mon Calamari had a lot of ships that were kind of torpedo-shaped and a little lumpy looking, but the majority of Mon Calamari cruisers fell into the category of Star Destroyers, like the MC-80 Home One, especially the MC-80 Liberty. It was probably a cruiser.
We take the MC. We combine it with Y wings and some A wings. You know what we get?
No.
YMCA.
No, we're not doing that. Dang, I'm running out of time. We'll go on to battle cruisers. Battle cruisers are really rare because what's the point of making a big ship that's not as powerful as a dreadnought?
Yes.
Like, there's not really much point. So there weren't a lot of those. There were a couple, like the Praetor Mark II. That was technically a battle cruiser. They're bigger than Star Destroyers and a lot more powerful. But they're not quite as big and powerful as the biggest ships. So, oh well.
It's whatever.
Yeah, you don't really have a ton of them. Dreadnoughts were, for some reason, rarer than battle cruisers, even though battle cruisers weren't really around at all. But these things were just the biggest of the big ships that you could get. Yeah, they were. Yeah, thank you, Andrew, for just stretching your arms out.
It's like a whole 6 feet.
Oh my gosh! If you even have a 6 foot wingspan.
I don't know my wingspan at the top of my head. I don't even know.
Yeah, neither do I. But these things were just anything bigger and more powerful than a battle cruiser, because these ships got absolutely gargantuan. They were really, really rare. You wouldn't see a lot of them, but when you would leave because they're going to kill you.
It's just like tanks.
Yeah.
And pre-World War II and during World War II.
Yeah, if you saw one, you just run away. They were just covered in guns for the most part. It was stupid how powerful these things got. The most powerful were the Eclipse, Viscount, Assertor, and Sovereign. And I would understand if none of you understand what any of those four are. All of those are from Legends, which are the books and stuff. The Eclipse is a giant black, like jet black ship with a super laser on it because it wasn't powerful enough just being covered in guns. It had to have a super laser on the front of it as well. I mean, the super laser is powerful enough to one-shot basically anything, including other dreadnoughts.
I mean, either go big or go home.
Yeah, I guess so. And this was by the Empire, so of course they have their super lasers. The Viscount was from the New Republic, which is what the Rebellion became after they won. And it was supposed to be designed to take on other dreadnoughts because the Empire still had a bunch of them. So they built Viscounts, which are really cool. They're very big. They're very, very well shielded. It's just really nice. They're also a Mon Calamari ship, so they look kind of lumpy. They're like torpedo shaped with lumps on them. Maybe it has cancer. Maybe it has cancer.
I thought we got past lumpy metal.
I guess not. The other two, the Assertor and Sovereign. The Assertor looks like if you took a Star Destroyer and infused it with all the steroids in the world. And that is what an asserter looks like. And that's stupidly powerful. And then the Sovereign kind of looks like a slightly scaled down Eclipse, but it still has a super laser and all the guns. So, yeah.
We're at 30 minutes.
Dang. Looks like we're going to have to do the actual, like, fighters and stuff some other episode.
But just remember one thing, and that is all of these are not as strong as a shovel.
Yes, the shovel beats all of them easily. You just throw one guy out in space with a shovel, wins every time.
I mean, after all, look at World War One. That one guy with the shovel managed to last how long now?
Insanity. Gotta give the win to him.
And if you for some reason feel like you haven't tortured yourself or you're not finished enjoying yourself for after this half an hour, guess what? Half an hour again, because we're about to do another episode in a little bit. So.
Oh yes, it's time for memes, my friends. Anyway, we're gonna have to call it. So, Andrew, you want to give us the outro?
Well, like, comment, and subscribe.
No,
we're
kidding. Not going into that.
I'm just kidding. I'm mostly sarcastically doing that whole thing.
You better be.
Yeah, no. Not like it really matters too much. I make so much money off of these. Likes, comments. I mean, you boost my ego.
Yeah.
So if you want me to have, like, the world's largest ego, keep going.
Yeah, basically.
But that's about it.
Yep. So, I guess we'll see you later.
Check out any of our other videos if you're bored.
Yep.
Peace.
See you.